The Philadelphia Eagles are a few weeks away from training camp, and their biggest positional group question may have just found an answer, as today we will talk about a few potential free agents that the Birds could sign for one final boost as they head into camp. We'll talk about it all and break it down, but welcome in to A to Z Philly. I'm RB, and I want to start it off with an article that I came across today from Dave Zangaro over at NBC Philly. He is doing a deep dive of each positional group, and today he looked at the edge rusher room, and obviously we have touched on this many times over the past couple of months. I mean, when you look at this roster as a whole, they don't have many holes, right? Like, they're very well built. We can go on and on and on, but Howie Roseman has done a great job. They are also very reliant on these young guys taking another leap in 2025. And when you look at the breakdown in this room, if Nolan Smith and Jalyx Hunt can take another leap, they should be in a really good spot. But based on how the rest of the roster is built, and it feels like we're pretty confident in most positions, right? There's a couple of groups, the safeties, the corners, we'll see what happens. But overall, edge rusher is where I'm looking at. They might need a few more veterans, at least one piece to help out. So today we're going to look at a few guys that the Eagles could maybe pick up before or after camp. But he goes ahead and he talks about some of these potential options at the edge rusher this year. He doesn't even include Nolan Smith. We know he's the guy. After BG got hurt, he was tremendous in the entire postseason. Then you have a guy like Jalyx Hunt, who didn't really play that much, thought he was going to be redshirted last year. Then he starts to get more snaps after the BG injury. He then emerges in the postseason as well, played really good even in the Super Bowl. So Jalyx Hunt going into year 2, age 24, we expect him to be the guy. But as we know, things can always be shaky from year to year. You never know until you know. So we'll see how Jalyx Hunt plays out. Then you have guys you signed in free agency on one-year deals, Azeez Ojulari, Josh Uche, guys that are either trying to, revive their career or maybe coming off injuries. And if these guys can give you solid production, even as a rotational piece, then it feels like you're pretty set. But you don't know. You just don't know. I like that they're in their mid-20s. We'll see how they play out. Then the Eagles draft Antoine Powell-Ryland in the late rounds, 23 years old. So we'll see what he has to offer. They bring back Patrick Johnson. They have KJ Henry, O'Shawn Mathis, and a couple others as well. But that is where the edge rusher room stands. How confident do you feel about it? I still think they could use some more veteran leadership in that room. The whole agenda here is to get younger, get athletic, and, have this firepower for the next couple years. But it doesn't help to bring in another name, especially if Ojulari and Uche can't live up to what you think they can. So I went and checked out a bunch of the free agents that are still available. A lot of guys right now who I think are in a spot where they're going to have to take a bit of a discount if they want to play football next year. We saw this a lot last year. The Justin Simmons of the world, who, by the way, still unsigned as well. We saw this with Judon. He was traded late last year. So you get to a point now where teams are trying to implement that model that the Eagles have utilized, right, and get younger and build through the draft and win on rookie contracts. So you have the Judons of the world and the Von Millers who are still unsigned and looking for a home. And although SpotTrack lists some of their contract values at like 10 to 15 per year, I don't see it happening. Maybe they'll get lucky, but when you look at the Eagles strategy, Howie Roseman is not going to go out and trade for a guy or pay him $40 million a year, right? We've talked about those options in the last several weeks, guys that are unhappy with their current situations. But where he really could strike is by bringing in a player that will sign for, $4 million. Eagles have the cap space to make it happen. And, more on like a prove it deal or maybe a training camp tryout or something like that. So I want to go through a couple guys on this list that I think could be viable options to be that rotational depth piece, that veteran piece, and could maybe help impact some of the younger players. The first we're going to take a look at is Kyzir White. Obviously played on the Eagles a couple years ago, was on the Super Bowl team that lost. Former 4th-round pick. He has been playing with John Gannon the last couple years. He went over there to Arizona with him after he left the Eagles. And this is a guy that has consistently given you the same thing throughout his entire career. Just decent production, right? He's not great. He's not terrible. I feel like he had a career year with the Philadelphia Eagles. Even his 2021 season was really good with the Chargers. And he's just been kind of floating along in the NFL, give him a 1-2 year deal, decent money, and, he'll be a consistent depth piece. That's how I look at Kyzir White. Obviously a couple years older now. He's 29 years old. So he still remains unsigned. And if you bring him in. Obviously more of a linebacker, but who knows what this room's going to look like, right? Jahad Campbell's still rehabbing an injury. Nakobe Dean rehabbing an injury. But Kyzir White has also shown occasionally that he can rush the quarterback as well. Pretty solid tackler in the open field. And he's familiar with Philadelphia. He really enjoyed playing here. The Eagles just had to let him walk due to money, right? They also let TJ Edwards walk, which sucked. But I think Kyzir White would entertain a reunion here in Philadelphia. Plus, he was born in PA as well. The second guy on this list that I think would be interesting, and I know a lot of people will probably disagree, is Matt Judon. He is going on 33 years old, 9 years of experience, had some really stellar years with the Patriots, and he was traded late last year to the Atlanta Falcons after a contract dispute. Patriots didn't want to extend him. He said, okay, trade me. And I think they even got a couple picks back for him late, but Matt Judon went to the Atlanta Falcons, who had a disastrous year, didn't really put much on tape, still had some decent stats. But if we look at Matt Judon, former 5th-round pick, he was drafted by Baltimore, played several seasons there, then really came into his own here in New England, 12.5 sacks, 15.5, then he had 4, and then he was traded to the Falcons. Last year, he had 5.5 sacks, only 25 tackles, dealt with some injuries, and a lot of people said, yep, look at that, Matt Judon completely fell off. Maybe you still believe that, right? And Spot Track projects him to get like 10 to 15 million a year. I don't see any way that'll happen. I think at this point, you have to bring him in on like a 1 year, $5 million deal or less. But I went and read this article about Matt Judon, and I didn't realize, how bad the situation was in Atlanta. We've talked about some other guys, even like Kyle Pitts earlier in the offseason. But look at what Matt Judon said about Atlanta this past year. He was asked if bad luck played a role in his precipitous sack decrease with the Falcons. Quote, "Hell nah. If you go look at the film, I dropped into coverage on 60% of the plays. It is hard to get a pick and a sack on the same play." So Matt Judon obviously not happy with his role. He was dropped back into coverage a lot. We saw similar things with Josh Sweat and some others back when Matt Patricia came in and all that stuff during that tumultuous year. And it really can make a huge impact on a player in terms of the scheme, and how they're utilized. We saw that this year with Vic Fangio and how he was really able to get the best out of some of these guys. So when you look at Matt Judon, I mean, sure, he may be at the end of his rope, but he is an experienced veteran. He knows how to play the position. He can still get to the quarterback, still had 5.5 sacks last year. When asked about his chances of returning to Atlanta, he said it's unlikely, especially after the team went and invested in younger edge rushers. So obviously a divorce is going to happen there, and he is going to sign elsewhere. So could he be a good instrumental piece in the locker room? Absolutely. And this guy has made his money over the years on getting to the quarterback. And last but not least, and I know people are going to be opposed to this, but Jadeveon Clowney, 32 years old, going on 33 as well. He has played 11 years in the NFL, lastly with the Carolina Panthers. He probably will get the most money out of any of these guys, and I do think it is a long shot. It would certainly take a lot of convincing for him to come to Philadelphia, and I know people don't like him because of the Wentz thing, and he's been a dirty player over the years, and there's been a lot of back and forth with the career of Clowney. Honestly, it feels like he's been in the league for like 30 years. Like every year we're like, oh, Jadeveon Clowney's still there? Remember when he was the first overall pick in the draft? Had a little bit of a slow start, but you can't deny his production. Even last year at 32 years old, he had 5.5 sacks on a terrible Carolina team. The year before, 9.5 sacks with the Baltimore Ravens. A couple years before that, 9 sacks with Cleveland. He is a pure vet. He knows how to play the position. He knows how to get to the quarterback. Pretty good run stuffer, and just, plays with that physicality that the Eagles really thrived on last year. Maybe he's not a typical Vic Fangio guy, especially with the Eagles usually only rushing 4 guys on the defensive end. But overall, I mean, this guy's a menace. And, as a veteran now later in his career, I think he could teach a few things to these young guys. Even if you don't like him, he has shown that he is willing to wait. Last year, he also signed late, I believe, and Carolina gave him a shot, and he went out there and played pretty well. We even talked about him at the last trade deadline as a potential piece that they could acquire, especially when Brandon Graham went down. So Jadeveon Clowney is also an option. I think he'll probably sign for more than $5 million, probably like 10 or close to it, and I think a team will get desperate and go out and give him money. So I think it's unlikely, but I still would evaluate that option. But those are my thoughts. There's still a couple other guys out here close to 30 years old that I think could be potential options. But right now, the market seems dried up. Teams seem to be set on trying to get younger, building through the draft, and moving forward that way. Just when you look at the Eagles roster, they have so many different options and ways they can go. And I do think the edge rusher position is one to keep our eyes on as we move into training camp, into the preseason, and into the season. So go ahead, give me your thoughts down below. What do you think the Eagles should do? Do they need any more help? Should they hit the pause button and wait for now? What do you think Nolan Smith and Jalyx Hunt can do this season? Give me your thoughts down below. As always, appreciate everybody for tapping in. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I'll catch you on the next one.